Good evening, good evening, everybody. I am so excited. I'm starting late. You're seeing me in the raw because I'm so excited to be your host, Dr. Deborah Jenkins, tonight for Black Talk Platform with my very special guest, New York State Senator Jamal Bailey. Welcome to Black Talk Platform, Senator Bailey.
Reverend Doctor, so happy to see you. So happy to be here. Happy Tuesday, as it were. Happy July. But I'm just happy to be here talking with you. I'm looking forward to a great conversation with you and everybody out there today.
So am I. So am I. I see the first one to raise her hand is a constant supporter and a friend of both of ours, Leah Richardson. Everybody's just coming in the house tonight. Thank you all. Let's just shout them out real quick. Leah, Tandra, Mr. Hartridge, my sister Juanita, Jermaine Latrell Antonetti, who works for our city councilman. We're so happy to have all of you show up in the room tonight to hear us discuss all the things that Senator Bailey is here to discuss. How's that? We're going to let it free flow tonight. There are just some things I do want to highlight because I think accolades are really important. I was just telling the senator how highly I respect him as a man, a family man. He has a beautiful wife and two beautiful children, two beautiful daughters. And he has a really warm personality. I've known him as long as he's been in office, and I've seen nothing but consistency from him. And that's a rarity in politics. So his public persona, what he presents to us as a man, a family man, is aligned with what he presents and brings us back to the Bronx from Albany as a legislator. And I think that can't be overlooked, Senator. Let's talk about you a little bit so that the audience, those who don't know you, I see people have been very excited about you being on tonight. Tell us what you want us to know about you.
So first, let me thank you for creating such a platform, Black Talk platform, right? Like I think it's critical for us to hear the voices from our community about the issues that we care about, and for us to have a dialogue, not a canned conversation, not something where I'm talking about talking points, something where you get to see who I am if you don't know me, and if you do know me, you kind of know how I am. I'm a little unfiltered sometimes, for better or for worse. But what I will say is that I do this job because I love it. Right. Like I ran for office because of a genuine love for my community. And one of those things that I love most about community is policy and legislation. Often it gets overshadowed about the policy work that we do. And sometimes what people think of government or elected officials is that it's about making sure that there is money given and that there are things given and projects built. That is critical and crucial, and those things need to be done. However, my view is that when we create a law, that law will last longer than that dollar that is able to be spent in whatever capacity it is, right? So we're looking to create lasting change. And I want to give you a shout out, Reverend Dr. Jenkins, because you pay attention to committee hearings. So we can talk about the process going forward. But I remember you sending me a message when we were talking. I was in the Children and Families Committee, and we were talking about one of the bills that I can talk about later about raising the lower age of juvenile responsibility. And I was simply speaking about the bill because I thought it was a crucial bill. It's my piece of legislation. And then Dr. Jenkins sends me a message saying, hey, I watched your committee meeting. Now, for those of you who don't know, everything that we do in the state is a matter of public record. It is available streaming. It is available on if you have Cablevision channel 116, you can watch the legislative proceedings depending on the Senate or the Assembly. But the committee meeting is not available on TV. You have to specifically search for them. So if you're searching for committee meetings, that means you're watching it with a purpose to understand. And so when you sent it to me, two things immediately struck a chord. One, I was honored that you thought my comments were good. The second thing that was amazing to me is like, wow, you're watching this, which is like a message that I like to tell my kids. Always remember that somebody is watching. No matter what you're doing, no matter where you're at, somebody is seeing that, right? And I don't mail it in. I don't phone it in. You know, I give it everything that I have, no matter, even if it's a committee meeting or on the floor of the Senate or in Co-op City or wherever. So I just thought that was a perfect example of, wow, like my constituents are not only, you know, phenomenal, they're paying attention. So I just, you know, I'm gonna stop there because I'm a rambler. You know, I'm a little bit of a rambler. But I just wanted to say, like, I just wanted to thank you for paying attention, and that's critical.
Absolutely. No. So I think that's also our reciprocal responsibility, right? We elect you all, but we shouldn't just let you float out there, right? If there's a piece of legislation that you all are proposing or you are speaking about, we have a responsibility to you to first support you if it aligns with what our wishes are, but also to just see what is being done legislatively, and just to give voice to it. And so I was so pleased, and we will talk about that particular piece of legislation later so that we can let everyone know. But I'm just very proud of the work you've been doing. And that was just one piece of legislation that Senator Bailey has successfully championed on behalf of our most vulnerable, our children, you know, and we'll talk about that a little later, like he said. But listen, I appreciate you recognizing my contribution to your position, your elected office. But I don't think it's a hard thing for me or many others to do, because you really do show up to do the work. And so if I can, I'm just so proud of you in many, many ways. I see that our state has great leadership. My eye is burning, everybody. Great leadership, and you are not the least of that leadership. But let us make it a little bit more local. I need something for my eye. A little more local. I've been telling everybody how proud of you I am, because you, as a Democrat, we are Democrats here on this platform. I mean, anybody can be watching, but right now this is the Democratic hour. You are, oh my goodness, the Bronx Democratic leader. And for those of you who don't know, that is a very, very consequential, how's that? A consequential position to have. And I'm so proud of you. Let me just share with the audience what you shared with me so that we can all be a little bit more informed. Senator Bailey is one of 4 out of 5, because there are 5 boroughs. For anyone who's outside of New York City who doesn't know that we are one city with 5 boroughs, and we have each borough has its own leadership and it's its own little government. But Senator Bailey, along with 3 others, most of you are familiar with Congressman Gregory Meeks. He is the Democratic leader in the borough of Queens. And then we have a female Black leader. Her name is Rodneyce Bishotte. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You absolutely did.
Okay. And she's in the county of Kings, or we call it Brooklyn. And then we have Keith Wright, who is in Manhattan. That is 4 African Americans, Black people, leading the Democratic parties in these 4 out of 5 boroughs of New York. I say kudos to the 4 of you. And of course, because I'm from the Bronx, especially you, right?
Thank you.
Especially you. And let's talk about that a little bit. I think that's very significant for our city, because there's a large population of African Americans and Latinos in all 5 boroughs, and we need proper representation. And I believe that you have just ushered in, under your leadership, several new elected officials that your party leadership supported. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So one, thank you, and I think yes, it is absolutely critical to have leadership that reflects our communities. It's cool to be serving as a Black county leader when there are 4 out of 5 of us happening in the city right now. So that's pretty cool. But as we all know, the job of well, I shouldn't say as we all know. What I'll say is that the job of a Democratic or any county leader, right? But the Democratic county leader, because this is, again, on this platform, this is who we are, is to make sure that we're building the strength of a party by doing a couple of things. By one, making sure that people are aware that your vote counts, that your vote matters, and that your vote, whoever it is that you vote for. We have endorsed candidates. We have candidates that we like, but that you vote no matter what in every single election, because it matters. It counts. Don't let anybody tell you that it doesn't. If you get a chance to Google Shelley Simons in Virginia, the election was decided on a coin flip. Not joking.
Wow.
Literally, a coin flip. So it can't come down to a coin flip here. The mayoral race was decided in a city of 8 million people by roughly 7,300 or so votes. That's a relatively small margin. Absolutely. So your vote counts, your vote matters. Right. So as a party leader, what I'm trying to do, or what we try to do as the party, as the collective, there is strength in numbers as a collective. It's not just me by myself. It's me, it's my team, it's Jason, it's Ariana, it's the whole Bailey bunch. I fully recognize that I don't do anything by myself. And I think that the message to our kids is that, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Absolutely. And if we want to go far. So building up the Democratic Party is making sure that you're recruiting solid candidates, not just that can win, but those who really care about their communities, those who are looking to invest in their communities. Right. And politics, to me, is a way to get towards solid governance, right? We need good politics to get stronger policy, right? So when you elect good people, these are the people who are going to either be passing the good bills and the legislation that matters, or these are the people who are not going to show up to session or their job and not pass bills and not do anything, right? Like we can't have elected officials who are not engaging on both sides of the platform. You have to be able to engage substantively, legislatively, and in the community. And I think that's critical. And I think that's my major role in making sure that we're ushering in a new generation. On this point, really quickly, what I'll say is that for the first time in the history of the Bronx, and again, I've had mentors and great leaders that have come before me, but on their shoulders I stand. And now, for the first time, we're going to have a majority city council delegation of women. It's the first time it's happened in the Bronx. Yes. We have 9 council members. 5 of them are primed to be women. And it's amazing. It's critical. But I think at the end of the day, it's about making sure that we're electing people who are up to the task. And we're going to have a herstory making, as it were, first African-American woman, first woman, period, to be the borough president in the Bronx, and that's in Vanessa Gibson. Yeah. And so it's an exciting time to be in office. There was an article about by Errol Lewis a couple of days ago, Dr. Jenkins, related to the Black political power in New York City. And I would encourage everybody to take a look at that. It speaks about Eric Adams. It speaks about Jumaane Williams. It speaks about the members of Congress. It speaks about the county leaders, the speaker, the majority leader, the attorney general, and that rise to power. But what I want to make abundantly clear is that, as our borough president says, that the sounds of salsa and merengue are played with African drums, that we cannot forget our Latino brothers and sisters, our Latina brothers and sisters. Like, yes, it is critically important to make sure that Black leadership is there. But I am personally indebted to the Latino community because my wife is of Latina descent. My children are Afro-Latinas. Right. So it is making sure that we can have and it's a phrase I'll throw out because I've said it a few times, but I think that it's germane here. If you like bacalao, that means you like saltfish. It's the same exact thing, just in a different language. Right. Have way more together in common than we can ever imagine.
That's right. You're absolutely right. And I'm glad you said that, because so often in politics, it's an either or, and it doesn't have to be that way. And I'm very proud of the representation that is coming in, the new ushering in of new fresh leadership. I think it's so incredibly important. Yes, we are proud to have our next borough president in the Bronx be a Black woman. I watched her campaign. I supported her. What I saw is that she cast that net wide to include everyone, and that speaks to the sentiment that you just shared. And I appreciate that. And I don't think that only because you are your beautiful wife is Latina, and your children, your daughters are Afro-Latina. I think you're sincere in that. And if anyone takes time, they will see the slate of candidates who are coming in to office under your leadership. And I say that because of the mentoring that they received as well. And we want to talk about mentorship a little bit. We had a special election here in December for our city council. And I did a couple of forums to present the candidates to the community. And I remember he's the councilman now, Kevin Riley, but there was someone who was one of the candidates was a little, it wasn't a debate. It was not a debate. It was a forum so they can present their platforms. And Assemblyman Hasty was on that Zoom meeting that we had to present the candidates, and Councilman Riley was one of them, and the people who were running against him, a couple of them. And there were so many pot shots clearly taken at the assemblyman, our assembly speaker, Mr. Hasty, right? He sat there and I just watched him. I watched his body language, like you say, you told your daughter, somebody's always watching. So I kept watching his body language as these insults were hurled in his direction. Calm, cool, collected. And I really, and I don't know him. I don't even know if I personally ever met him, but that speaks volumes as your mentor. And Kevin Riley's, Councilman Riley's mentor, and many others' mentor, because if you can sit there while you're being insulted, basically, and say nothing because this was not about you, this was about Councilman Riley getting his message out, that speaks volumes. And so what happens with someone like me, knowing that you and Councilman Riley come from under that type of leadership, we're always going to be watching to see, not that you should be his clone, but to see the good lessons you've learned from him come into fruition. Can you speak a little bit about that mentorship that he's provided for you and others, but also that you try to provide for your wonderful team, the Bailey Bunch?
The Bailey, so it was frustrating to me also to see these unnecessary comments, because what we do is we say we mentor, we say that we want to do, we want to build up, but when somebody does it, they're criticized because of the moment that we're in. What I can tell you about Carl Hasty is that I did not know him before I became his intern. I knew who he was. In 2004, I signed up for a legislative internship while I was a senior at the University at Albany. I walked into the speaker's, now Speaker Hasty, and at the time he was a second-term assembly member who always requested interns from his district because he wanted to make sure that he was not afraid of the next generation. There are some people who don't want to mentor because they want to stay in the spotlight or they want to stay in office forever. Carl was saying, look, we have to do this. But back to when I walked into his office, now I'm nervous, right? I walk into his office and I'm like, and I'm stammering a little bit. And I'm like, hey, hi, Mr. Hasty. I'm Jamal Bailey and I'm your intern. Is there anything I can do? Can I go get you some coffee? Can I do that? He's like, sit down for a second. It's like, all right, one, my name is Carl. Mr. Hasty was my father. Two, I don't drink coffee. I like tea, but I'm an adult. I can get it myself. Three, you're here to learn. You're going to learn about the way things work in the community. You're going to learn about the legislature. That's what you're here for. No disrespect to other things. You're not here to solely make copies or to solely answer phone. If those things happen, then so be it. But your job is to figure this out. So I'm floored. I'm like, wow. Now, mind you, it's like I've had summer jobs. I've never had an internship where, one, it was like the level of prestige. This is a state assembly. Wow, this is government. This is my representative. I Googled him, or I don't even know if we had Google back in 2004. I Yahoo'd him or Bing or whatever search engine we used, right? Like I looked him up and I found some things out because I had known who he was, but what he has been, and he has provided a foundation, governmentally for me to succeed and shine. And he always wanted me to make sure that I was involved and that there was a path being going forward, right? It wasn't, hey, run for office. And quite frankly, Carl never encouraged or discouraged me to run for office. He simply provided me with opportunity. He said, you should be involved. And so I got involved. I'll never forget the number 89534 of the 2004-2005 legislative session. Why do I remember that name? Because that was a piece of legislation that I helped to draft as an intern. I was given the autonomy by Carl to draft legislation, research it. And then when that bill passed, what happens is we get what's called a pen certificate. It's a framed copy of the pen that the governor, then Pataki, signs the bill with. Carl gave me a copy of that pen certificate, and I keep that in my office because it reminds me of where I come from. So no matter how many bills I pass on my own, I always remember that bill as the first piece of legislation that I actually worked on. And then from there we get Kevin. Now I've known Kevin for 20 plus years because we've gone to church together, and Kevin was a leader before he knew he was a leader. It was one of these and I don't want to use the words of our faith leaders, but anointed, I think is a good way to say it, right? Like Kev was that person that you always thought he was older than he was because of his ability to lead a group. I remember he took a trip to Tennessee with Butler with Butler. Shout out to my church, Butler. And my cousin Terrell was with him, and they just spoke so highly about his leadership and his decision-making abilities and problem-solving skills. And I don't know if he was 14, 15 at that time. And it's just being able to see his evolution. Kev, when he went to school, he could have done something else. Very bright young man. He decided to come back, and he stayed involved in the community. And again, when it was time for him to run, it wasn't because, like I need to run because I need to run. It's because, like I need to serve. And I think that's the leadership there. And then you have, speaking of Kevin's leadership, one of the things that you said when I saw you on at the Dope Dads event, it takes someone special and secure in who they are as a leadership, that when they're giving out an award, to have somebody else on there. That's and right. Jermaine Antonetti being on an award that Councilmember Riley gave was amazing. And that shows that we're not afraid to bring up the next generation. And that's another young and up and coming brother in co-op and in the Bronx in general. So it's just, I'm just excited. I'm excited to be a part of a team that has nurtured me. So
I'm excited too. I really am excited about your leadership, yours, Assemblyman Hastie's, and Council Member Riley. Since we're talking about him, let's see if I can get it without losing my lighting, what Senator Bailey is talking about. And this was on Juneteenth. If you all can see it. Isn't this beautiful? First of all, if you all can see this is so beautiful. I mean, the colors are just beautiful. Those are my branding colors and everything. And the councilman, along with Jermaine Antonetti, who was here earlier, I'm not sure if he's still watching. They gave this to me in honor of Juneteenth, and that is what the senator was talking about. Now, listen. I think you do have to be so confident in who you are. And you do that without being full of yourself. In fact, you both do. You both do. As I said, I have not personally met the assemblyman, but I see the comments lighting up saying he needs to be on the show. Okay. I can't tell y'all who's next up at this point, but I'm going to try my best to get the assemblyman on here because, again, our legislators need our support. Do you understand that Assemblyman Hasty is the Speaker of the Assembly? We also have, and don't let me mess up her name, the leader of the Senate is a sister, a Black woman, Senator Cousins. Am I correct in her name?
Andrea Stewart Cousins. Yes, indeed.
Yes. Look, this is a pivotal time in the state of New York because from what I can see, things are going pretty well. And let me just preface my continuing comments by saying we have two different brains. The senator has a brain and I have a brain, which already lets everybody know that we're not going to necessarily always agree, but I'm never going to just be disagreeable because I can. And I think that's what differentiates true leadership. You know, we need to support them in their leadership because they're getting the work done and they're bringing monies back to their communities. And this is not just them. This is most of the legislators, and we need to support them where we can. And Senator Bailey is one who has shown himself to be amenable to listening to our gripes if we have them, because look, we all have agendas. I'm saying a legislative agenda. I'm not saying his personal agenda. It may not include my pet project. How will he know about my pet project if I don't tell him about it? So I have to inform him, and he will be honest and say, well, you know what? We might not get to it during this session. And then you and we have to be comfortable with understanding that we might have some more work to do to prepare it for the next session. So we have to work alongside our elected officials, which brings me to an issue that I'm really concerned about right now, Senator. You cannot turn on local news in New York and not hear about the incredible uptick in crime. Especially throughout the 5 boroughs. I'm not as astute about what's happening upstate, but this is our home right here. Do you have any thoughts? What are you all saying behind doors that you can share with us as constituents to let us know you all are planning certain things or working on certain things to help keep the city safe or to make it safer?
Sure. So it's the same thing we would say on this platform and any other platform. Gun violence is a critical problem. Violence in general is a critical problem. Now, recently, we finally been able to get it codified in the state where with the recognition that gun violence is a part of a public health epidemic, right? Because what happens is that we tend to think of gun violence as simply just violence, as some sort of isolated matter. But gun violence takes place because of other factors that are surrounding it, right? Generally speaking, these, and I say generally because there are certain situations where that just takes place, but gun violence is predicated upon other things taking place. Right. Is that economic depravity? Is that unfortunately, lack of education, so lack of social opportunity, right? And so some of these things that take place, how do we fix that, right? So one, I think that violence and crime, these things that happen because of illness or necessity, right? And so the illness part is critical. We're talking about whether it's mental health, whether we're talking about, we're talking about other things like that. Necessity is the economic necessity.
Right.
Now, you have that portion. Then we put it together with how do we combat it, right? And it's a multi-pronged approach. It's not just law enforcement,
right?
Not just community, it's not just credible messengers,
right.
It's not just elected officials. It is everybody doing their part to figure out how do we stop this. So what's happened is that we put money in the budget or post budget into what are called credible messengers. Some people know them as SUV, Stand Up to Violence. Pastor Jay Good does an excellent job there.
Yes.
Bragg with David Kaba also does excellent work up here. Snug in Mount Vernon, which Snug is guns spelled backwards, and they do great work in Mount Vernon in the district, and there are other organizations throughout the Bronx: Guns Down, Lives Up, SOS, RTG, Release the Grip, and Charter to My Head, Not My Heart. Everybody, if you're from another organization, there's so many who are doing the great work. So we put money into those organizations. Myself, the council member, the speaker, the Congress member, we've put significant monies into these areas. But again, it's not just that, right?
Right.
Like, we have to be able to make sure that, like, our most importantly, our young folks know what the value of life is, and that this is not it's not a video game where we can simply press the reset button.
Right.
Once someone's gone, they're gone, and their families suffer, and the generations suffer because then what happens is we get into, as my granddaddy would say, Hatfield and McCoy type of things.
Yeah.
Where, you killed my dog, so I kill your cat, and now they kill your other dog, and it goes back and forth. And at what point does the senseless violence, the cycle of violence, end?
Right.
It is when we provide education, when we provide economics. Economic sustenance.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, shout out to Snug up in Mount Vernon, and of course, Pastor Gooding's program that's out of Jacoby. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Jacoby. Yeah, those are great programs. So since I'm up here in Co-op City and Jacoby's over there, does that expand up to here and on the other side, Edenwald?
So there are certain areas that, like, they have catchment areas, right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, on this side of Edenwald, around Bronxwood, like Bragg, is Bronx Rising Against Gun Violence.
Okay.
They're a subsidiary of Good Shepherd, and Good Shepherd does amazing work in the community as well. David Kaba is in charge of Bragg, and they have catchment areas where the Bragg folks are charged with really difficult tasks, where they walk the neighborhoods and they try to diffuse beefs, as it were, prior to them bubbling over. And so the issue with sometimes the catchment areas are limited because you want them to be effective. So you don't want there to be an over expansive catchment area because your focus is limited. So there's no specific Co-op City doesn't fall within the specific auspices of either one. But what'll happen is, if there is a shooting, there have been shooting responses where we've had marches that have been placed that have been taken on by Bragg or SUV or Snug. And one of the things that I've seen in recent memory, and I just want to talk about one of Co-op City's own, Noel Ellison, his nephew Brandon was tragically taken away from us far too soon. About a year and some change ago, and we did recently a street renaming. And it was I don't know how Eve Hendricks does it. Shout out to Sister Eve. I don't know how she even gets through. It's just tough. But what I can tell you is that, like, the credible messengers, the violence interrupters, what they're doing is that they're creating bonds, and their recognition is that, hey, we can't just say it's the North Bronx or the South Bronx or the East Bronx or the West Bronx, because it's really silly to say that if I've got a problem on my side of Baychester, then you don't have a problem on your side of Baychester. Baychester is Baychester. It's the same folks that live on either side. So we have to think about that, and I think that's a good message from there. I do think that there is more that we can do, but I think that comes with resources. We need more resources, sir.
Absolutely. And I think those programs are really good. Pastor Gooding is a very good leader and very proud of the work that they do. And I am as well, and as well as the others, I'm sure. Yes, shout out to Miss Eve Hendricks. And I do know that at one point she was actually traveling with our newly Councilwoman Gibson. Many of the places she would go, she was Councilman Gibson or Borough President-elect Gibson sort of put her under her wings. And I think that this is so important. one thing I really love about Miss Eve is that she was not ready. And I think sometimes people force family members of the victims to rush to a place of forgiveness, a place of calm down the city and everything, when that is not necessarily their role, if that is something that they naturally feel that they should do. But it's a part of the grieving process to express your anger. And I've heard her say it more than once. And so kudos to her, and hopefully other victims' families will see that that's a part of the process as well. We all have a role to play. And so, yes, I'm glad you all renamed the street. It was really great because this young man, his life meant something, and you all took notice of it. Let's pause and see what people are saying over here in the comments, Senator. I think they're having like back and forth comments, but I'm going to run back up. Sister Nika Green had to jump out, and I'm sure she'll come back later and catch the tail end. Everybody's just happy to have you here, Senator, and hear from you.
I'm happy to be here. I said that, what I'm not going to do is shout out everybody, because that's when you get in trouble.
Big trouble.
That's what you do. So shout out to everybody.
Look, he's shouting y'all all out. Because I'm gonna miss people. You know why? Because the comments, and y'all forgive me, but I'm only seeing what's coming up in the YouTube comments. That's what I see. And then I'll go back, and there's so many that I've missed on Facebook. But like the senator said, shout out to everyone. This is your opportunity to ask him questions if you should have any. Shoot. And I'm gonna we can both see them. You can see the comments, right, Senator?
No, I can't. Well, hold on. Let me see. Comments. Oh, yes, I can.
I'll be right back. Check those out, Senator, and you can definitely respond without me. I'll be right back. Oops.
Okay. All right. So look, I'm seeing some of these wonderful co-op residents and beyond. So shout out to all of you. Let me just say how humbled that I am, because y'all know Reverend Doctor, and she's just a ball of energy who cares, right? And so one of the things about in our community, we have to make sure we continue to work together and recognize that sometimes here's the thing, right? And I'm a whisper it. We're not always going to agree, right? We're not always going to agree, right? And it's all good that we don't agree. But if we don't agree, it's okay to not agree, but we have to give a reason why we're not agreeing, right? It's like when I talk to my kids. Well, how come you don't want it? Because I don't want it. Well, that's not an answer. Even as a parent, I just can't say do it just because. Well, even though that's an ultimate big joker, the just because. But that's only in very limited circumstances. So what I'm asking you all is just to make sure that what we're doing is, when you have a concern, if you have a question about a legislative matter. Like, perfect example, we're talking about gun violence, right? Mm-hmm. I'm the chair of the Codes Committee. I have been the sponsor of the majority of the recent police reform. And so some people would say, hey, if you're about police reform, then that means you don't like police. That is not true. That is the furthest thing from the truth. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. Absolutely. But we have to have these conversations so that you can say, like, oh wait, this is what bail reform is. This is what 50A is. This is what this bill is, as opposed to the headline. Because I do think the media tries, but sometimes we get fixated on headlines as opposed to reading the entire line, right? So I want people to ask questions if they don't know, if there are concerns about some of the things that we're doing up in Albany. And I would encourage you, and sometimes I'm on a lot, again, I do some of it on Twitter, a lot of it on Twitter. I was talking to Dr. Jenkins earlier. I'll post a lot of the things that I do, like the committee meetings, when the Codes Committee meetings meet, and we won't be back in session until January, but I would encourage folks to watch those, because you get a chance to see why am I asking you to vote for me? Why? So I can go up to Albany and do something to assist
Right.
And I have to do that. And but I just see that you're back, Dr. Jenkins. I'm sorry.
Oh no. That was an important lesson to teach us. I mean, they don't even teach civics anymore. So you're giving us a lesson in being involved. And I think our friend Leslie Peterson sort of pinpointed the reason, one of the reasons why you're here. We often focus on what's happening nationally as it relates to politics. But I am a true believer in the saying that all politics is local. Mm-hmm. And so we have to be involved with what you're doing. Since you brought up the bail reform legislation, it has been somewhat of a thorn in the side of the NYPD. We've heard the commissioner speak about it many, many times. Now, we had Judge Tapia before the shutdown. He's an advocate, but he's a really great leader on the bench, in my opinion. He came to our church and he really talked about that reform bill, and he gave us copies of it and everything. And this is what the senator is saying. They're not back in session until January, but once they are, you might want to consider tuning in to the hearings. It's cold, so it might not be very, very provocative to you, but it's going to give you the information that you really need to make informed decisions. So what I saw, and you can correct me where I'm wrong, is that while the onus was really being put on you all as a body for passing such a bill in the way it was passed, I felt like it is incumbent upon the district attorneys to make sure that, first of all, I think I'm mixing up the two laws, because the discovery, I think I'm wrong about bail reform. The bail reform has been problematic, and I'm a big reform person. So I feel it can be strengthened. I really do. How you get there, can you tell us what we would need to do as community leaders and advocates to help strengthen it if it comes back up again, so that we work in partnership with our local law enforcement to keep our community safe. So I personally am not averse to it being strengthened. But as it relates to the 50A, the discovery?
So 50A is police reform, and that relates to the permission of these employment records of office, yes. Right? Mm-hmm. So what happened in the case when Ramarley Graham was killed, when Sean Bell was killed, when Eric Garner was killed, right? What happened there, right?
Right.
It took, I don't want to say an act of God, but it took a well-timed leak in order for these families to be able to get information relating to the disciplinary history that these officers had.
Right.
It couldn't take that. And so passing and repealing 50A made these records available, right? Discovery in a criminal matter is related to evidence, right? So prior to the passage of discovery, the discovery reform that we did, the district attorney would be able to hold evidence until literally the eve of trial. And so what that would do, that would prejudice the alleged criminal defendant. Bail reform relates to a certain number of offenses that no longer require cash bail. Now I'm going to break these things down, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So discovery relates to evidence which should be part of what's happening in my opinion. This is something that when I'm an attorney by trade, for those who don't know, and when I was practicing civil matter, when monetary damages were there, not life and liberty on the line, discovery was provided early, it was often, and it was plentiful. Mm-hmm. And my friends who were defenders, they were waiting for that same level of discovery, and it would often prejudice these defendants into taking a plea that they didn't necessarily believe in. And look, and those of us who we know folks who have sometimes they may have taken a plea so that they can get out of something sooner rather than later. That's not a position that we want something in. Now, one of the things that I will dispel head on is they're saying that these reforms are pro-criminal.
Right.
Couldn't be any further from the truth.
Right.
When you look at the scales of justice that have been imbalanced so long. It simply is a desire to bring balance to the situation and provide an equal opportunity. I do not want a defense attorney nor a prosecutor having an advantage. Right? I want there to be an equal opportunity to be able to prove the case. Absolutely. When it comes to bail reform, right? And I know bail reform is sometimes a touchy subject, because what you see is individual X has been released, and they couldn't set bail. A couple things on that, right? It's interesting that we think about bail reform. So if I were to say that crime X was committed by person A and person B, if crime X was committed by person A and they paid bail, do you feel any less safe? The reality is that if that person paid to get out of jail for that same crime that person B committed and couldn't pay to get out of jail, what we are doing is criminalizing poverty as opposed to dealing with the actual offense.
Right.
That's the issue with bail reform, right?
Yep.
Like, that's the issue. It's if you're telling me that Harvey Weinstein should have been in jail, at the same time. Well, he got out of jail because he was able to pay $1 million,
right,
with some heinous things. Does that make you feel more comfortable because he was able to pay bail?
Absolutely.
Right, for that same offense? Now, the issue that some people are having is the repeat offender.
Right.
And I understand it, and we're always listening to conversations, but I just don't know if is criminalization the key to being able to solve our quality of life issues. I'm not saying that everything is perfect. As legislators, we always go back and look at things if we need to. I'm not, and quite frankly, I don't think the data set is complete enough on bail reform. We enacted bail reform. It took place. These changes took effect January 1st, 2020, and we hit the pandemic. And so we don't have a real reading of what these bills have done or can do. So I think the jury's still out, as it were.
Yeah.
On these legislations.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. I agree with you. And just for clarity, I'm fine with 50A as it is, because a defense attorney should be able to receive the charges, the allegations against his or her client. And we would probably have Kalief Browder here with us today had that been passed before his life was taken from him at 16. I'm getting all passionate here because he's always that poster child for why it should have happened long ago. So you all did a wonderful job on that, and I applaud you all for doing that. As it relates to bail reform, if I'm not mistaken, and even I think I just heard you, Judge Tapia, put it where the goats could get it, as Joe Madison always says, the Black Eagle. Bail reform is not about guilt or innocence. It is to ensure that the person, am I right now? Is it to ensure that the person returns?
Yes. So and again, I think you hit the nail on the head. What we tend to think about bail is something that we learn in TV shows and that we see on the media, is that the concept of bail is supposed to hold people indefinitely, right? And so the majority of the folks who were there who weren't paying bail were folks who simply couldn't afford to pay bail. Right. So wealth-based detention, are we so the same? And again, I want to drill down on this, right? If the same offense is committed by person A or person B, if person A is able to pay their way out, they're still out. Do you still feel? Do you feel safer? Does that because what was happening is that these folks were able to, if you were well off enough, you were able to pay bail anyway.
Yep.
And they were able to get out. And so and I think that the conversation is that you should not be incarcerated based upon the amount of money that you either have or do not have.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. We had a recent case. It wasn't here in New York, but a man, an Asian man, as a matter of fact, shot a 6-year-old for leaving his bike in front of his yard or something. He his bail was like $1,000 or something, and so he walked right away. But then I guess there was a groundswell, public outcry, and judge looked at it again, raised the bail, and this time I think it was raised to $100,000, and he didn't have the $10,000 to do the 10%, and so he had to go back to jail. So that's not a case where he was criminalized. That was not a case where he was criminalized because of a lack of funds. It was a bail that was set at a reasonable rate, as opposed to a lot of times what happens in the inner cities, and people just are in poverty and they cannot get the fair representation that the law allows for all of us, regardless if we committed the crime or not. The law is supposed to be equitable. And so when you make it about money, and I don't have any, but Harvey Weinstein does, is inequitable, and I'm not represented in the same way. I'm not even seen as the same level of citizen because I don't have access to the monetary resources. Thank you so much for telling us about that, Senator, because I do believe that we get these sound bites on TV, as you said, and the media doesn't always do a great job. They just don't. And so what we hear is often one side. We also need to hear the other side. Yeah. Senator, let me go back to a question Leah Richardson had. Can you help our community with vocational training for our youth?
So yes. The short answer is yes, but I think it's going to take a little bit more time, right? It's going to take us to figure out what we like. Okay, I'm thinking of a lot of different things at once.
Okay.
So Brooklyn has like a Navy Yard, right? Brooklyn has a Navy Yard where they're doing STEAM-based stuff. And I think that there is no one true path to prosperity. Everybody may not want to go to college, but everybody can be successful with the gifts and talents that they have. So vocational training is critical. I know, Lord knows I'm not handy. So if I need something fixed, I got to call a handy person, whether it be a handyman or a handy woman, right? Women can do it too, sisters. Y'all are just as handy as we are. So, but in all seriousness, I think that it's critical that we do that. Is that creating more vocational programs in schools? That may be a part of it. That in ultimately, what I'd like to see at some point, and again, it all depends on capital, is the creation of a new vocational or trade school, in the borough, so that it would be that sort of education. Now, what we do have is sometimes what we don't utilize as much, in some of the we can do better a little bit with the labor unions, in my opinion, in getting these apprenticeships. And so that, our young folks who are interested in the trade, we can have some of the table, like, that you have the painters from DC9 or the carpenters, the local carpenters, or the mason tenders, in getting folks involved in these trades sooner rather than later.
Yes.
So that there's a path towards a good union job. Nothing against non-union. If you're a non-union worker, shout out to you. Thank you for feeding your family. But I think that unions have been the traditional path to the middle class. Absolutely. And I know my grandfather was a Teamster, and if not for the Teamster union, I don't know if there's a path to prosperity for my family, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's creating that class. And so from that point, Lee, I think it's also critical that we think about vocational training, but we think about vocational training, and I'll add on to that with tech, right? Because the great new digital world, right? Aldous Huxley, A Brave New World. It's a brave new digital world, right? Yeah. So we've got to make sure that our folks are well in tune with what's happening in the digital scape, and that's not just being able to go on Instagram or Facebook. That's being able to code, and that's being able to write language and do things and write programs, write programming. So I think that's all critical and things that we should be focusing on.
I think that's great. And it is something that Leah and we've talked about several times. And we actually talked about it. Jermaine was on our show last week, and he was talking about the needs for young people. So we're all sort of saying the same thing, and we can get a crew of volunteers. But at a certain time, and my husband has said this to me over and over again because he sees how much I volunteer, right? At a certain point, with all of your experience, your expertise, you have to get paid, right? So volunteerism is great. I'm a church leader, so we know how to do volunteerism. You know, we know how to gather the troops, rally the troops around an issue. But why are resources so short for certain things, such as this? If we all agree, we're all agreeing here that everybody is not going to go to college. Everyone doesn't want to go to college, but there are other pathways to economic advancement in our community. Why aren't we putting money behind vocational training? Obviously, you've already done the budget for this time, but what do we need to do in order to get on all of your radar for next session and the budget to come?
Well, I think that there has to be I don't want to say a concerted effort, but I guess I'll say concerted effort to make sure that that's highlighted, right? Because I think it's something that you brought up at the very top of the show. Look, I think that between me and my team, we do a lot to make sure that we hear what you have to say and that we listen and we do what you want us to do to the best of our ability. Okay. My district has 318,000 plus people. Wow. It is very difficult, if not impossible, to know what every single person in my district wants or needs. And so that's where the reach out has to happen. Now this is on the radar, right? This is on my radar. So we should be having conversations. Sure. And so what I can do is sometimes, one of the things that I think, again, Dr. Jenkins, we spoke about this earlier. It's okay not to know, right? And sometimes off the top of my head, I'm not going to be perfect to you and give you a political answer and say something that's a ball of nonsense and that's disproven. What I'm going to say is that, like, yes, I know we need it in the Bronx. Are there other programs? I can look into what other vocational programs or what kind of money is being spent on vocational training in the state, because there has to be money being spent on vocational training. Specifically where it's going, that should be our focus, making sure that some of those dollars are coming to the Bronx in Lower Westchester to make sure that our kids are receiving some of the training. Because when I was in school, I remember Grace Dodge and Taft and Gompers. Absolutely. They had vocational programs. I went to the Bronx High School of Science. Even within the Bronx High School of Science, on the very first floor, there was a VTC, Vocational Training Center, where individuals were doing some vocational training. And so I'm wondering, I'd have to specifically look at where these vocational dollars are. I can promise I can get an answer sooner rather than later. But and as you think about that, where's the money coming from? It's probably not as much as we need, but I just don't want to bang my fist on the proverbial table and say we're not getting this, and things of that nature. So.
Okay, no, I'm gonna just shout out one program in the South Bronx. They were my guest. The founder of Inner City Lighthouse was my guest a few weeks ago. They were having a benefit concert that featured Atlantic Star and SOS Band, two of my favorites, especially the SOS Band. They were doing a fundraiser, but they were also trying to raise awareness to the homelessness situation. As they try to build their vocational training program. They're already doing brick masonry and stuff like that. Their problem is funding, accessing the funding. So definitely, Senator, if you can, now that it is on your radar, we'll keep coming back, because Leah and I talk about this honestly all the time. We understand that it's not going to be every young person who will go to college. And so we have to have alternatives. But I love the fact that you raised the issue of technology, because I just see our young people are so adept at using their phones to do all types of things. Let's turn those into dollars, turn those phones into enterprise for them. How do we do it? And what's the best way to go about it without having to always reinvent the wheel? I am not one of those people who say that we must reinvent the wheel. Listen, everybody, I'm going to get some more comments here, but there's one more thing I wanted to discuss with the senator before he has to go. I'm going to post this pin this comment real quick for you, Senator, from
Sure.
Wonderful Reverend Karen Vicky Lewis. She's saying psychiatrists, psychiatric emergency rooms for children is horrible in the Bronx. Psychiatric, the triage, the temporary placement for hospital stays, etc. What can be done? The mental health issue, you touched on it briefly before. It's a huge problem, even as it relates to criminal justice reform. What do you say to Karen Vicky?
So yes, it's a huge problem. So one of the issues that I guess it depends on where it is, right? So I know we have the Montefiore Children's Hospital over on Bainbridge. And I think that's a specific dedicated area. And I guess what I would ask is that if this is a more specific question, like, let me know if there's a specific question. Obviously, the answer is we need more funding. We need more beds, right? We need more mental health professionals. And we need to, let me just make sure I read it. I think she put it in the chat. Temporary placement for hospital stays, etc. So I guess thank you for bringing it back up. I think it really depends on where is it Montefiore? Is it North Central? Is it Jacoby? Who is it and where, right? And you can Monty and Jacoby. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for responding. And what I can do is I can reach out to the leadership and speak about the issues. Now, maybe you might not want to specifically write the specific nature of the comments there, and we can have a conversation offline. And when I say conversation offline, folks, I'm not trying to be non-transparent, but when we're speaking about issues that could potentially be sensitive, I just want to give deference to Ms. Lewis. If she chooses to write it, I will be happy to accept it in the platform that it is. I just like to give deference there. So I just like to say, we're not trying to hide the ball or obfuscate anything. This is just trying to say, I'd like to be able to specifically look into this issue and say, hey, this is a matter. So it's about reaching out to the leadership of those respective hospitals. Absolutely. And giving them that concern. But if there are specifics there, like I use my kids as an example a lot of the times, and I'm not saying this is childish or trivial. I want to be very clear. I just utilize my daughters as often when I make analogies. Sissy's bothering me. What is she doing? She's bothering me. You gotta be more specific.
Right.
You're saying she's bothering you. What is she doing to bother you? Mm-hmm. How has she been bothering you? Right. Give me a little bit more about it. And I just want to be mindful and respectful of the space that we're in, even though we are public, even though I am a public official and I'm happy to bear everything. I just think that there's a level of sensitivity that I like to give people if they so desire. So, but Reverend Lewis, I'd be happy to reach out to you further and have discussions about a specific way. And if you'd like for me to get in contact with folks, I'd be happy to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you. That is wonderful. She said she can speak with you offline. Let me post it because it's hard for us to read it. Okay. So and again, so if that's a situation, then so like I'd be happy to answer. So what I can do is I can reach out to the leadership of either hospital, and again, like this is where I am going to say we should speak offline because they're just by tugging at the strings. I think there's something that I need to ask you a little bit offline so that I can a little bit more to drill down on it. And again, it's not about being evasive because I'm here and I'd be happy to do that. Thank you so much.
I see the phone number, so let me write this down.
Number.
I see it. I'm gonna
put it up. Well, I'm not gonna put it up there because I don't want everybody to have your number, Rev. But the senator is writing it down.
So hold on, I'm putting in my notes. I'm not texting, so I'm just gonna. If it's either gonna be from me or one of my team, and what I want to say is this, right? And Reverend Jenkins understands this, and what I want to say to those who are watching, when elected officials. When we have the members of our staff reach out to you, it is not because we are dismissing you. Right. It is not because we believe that your concern is not critical enough or crucial enough to be able to to handle, right? What I believe is that like sometimes I'm like, for example, today I was downtown in Manhattan at a press conference and I'm running around. And if you want something done during the course of regular business hours, my staff is going to be able to reach out to you. So I just want to make sure that folks know, hey, if I say my staff is going to reach out to you, it's not that I'm trying to give you the stiff arm or I don't want to deal with you. It's because there's a lot going on. I see a question about looking to stop and frisk. I have not seen that as he has not directly indicated that he's going to do that. I am not a proponent of stop and frisk. I'm on record as being not a proponent of bringing back stop and frisk. I think that I think it was rendered unconstitutional, and it wasn't rendered unconstitutional. I'm sorry, but it's highly problematic. But I don't think he should bring it back. I do think that we do need innovative ways of addressing crime, though, and I do think that we can walk and chew gum at the same time and be reform-minded while understanding that law enforcement, they need to be able to do their job. Does that mean that they need military-grade weapons? No. Does that mean that they need to do stop and frisk? No. Does that mean that they should be stopping us in Mill Street? Absolutely not. But do I think that we have to be able to have a nuanced conversation? Context matters. And so it's difficult for us to be able to say that there's a dispositive solution for everything. There's no catch-all way of public safety, in my opinion. Public safety in Co-op City is different than public safety in Baychester, and that's the same borough. It's 0.7 miles away, right? So we have to be nuanced. But to your point, Mr. Harris, I am not a proponent of stop and frisk. And I am hopeful that stop and frisk does not come back in the form that it was in. So I also want to be clear about stop and frisk. Stop and frisk never really went away. So like I just like the use of it severely decreased, but stop, question, and frisk as it is called is not necessarily has not necessarily gone away. The use of it has been severely limited. But it's just but. To your point, Mr. Harris, I do not believe that we should be looking to do that in the record in the ways that it was done before.
Okay. All right. So I thank you, Quadri, for that question. I'm so glad it came up and you were not late. It was right on time because we needed to ask, because it is a concern for those of us who desperately want to see it never come back again. But just to say, and I'm not trying to get you on record saying anything, because I speak out, and I know that if anything that we need from you is to be able to be at the table with him and strongly discourage him about something like that, and not be afraid of his Republican counterpart who is very ready to pull that trigger and bring it back. So nuance is fine. Yes, do the work, have the officers do the work, but not at the expense of Black and brown bodies as it has been used so effectively in the past. So yeah. C. Rosa, we are happy to have you here, and shout out to the senator for presenting us with an excellent interview. I'm missing some other comments here. Everyone is really happy having you here, Senator. I don't want to miss this, because this is this is what the senator was talking about earlier. And let's let him get his applause for successfully presenting S4051A. Is that good?
Yes, it is.
Can you tell them what that is? That Senate bill is, Senator? And
so what was happening is that, we did raise the age a few years back, raising the age of criminal responsibility in New York State, right? Making sure that that we no longer criminalize young children as adults. We didn't treat children as adults. But what's happening on the other end? It's when you're over criminalizing children. We're still waiting the governor's signature. So hopefully it'll be sent to the governor in sooner rather than later for signature. And what we've done is raise the lower age of criminal responsibility from 7 to 12. So what was happening is that at the age of 7, you could be arrested in the state of New York. until the governor signs it into effect, it still will be the case. 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, you can be arrested in the state of New York without knowing, not without knowing, but those young folks don't know the gravity of what it is that they've done. Now, detractors will say that we're making excuses. We're not making excuses. And if you look at anything about child psychology or, child development, I should say, you know that the brain is not fully formed, and you know that children are incapable sometimes of knowing the gravity of the decisions that they make on a regular day. Now, imagine them in a potential criminal matter. Imagine them with the fear. Imagine us when we're scared as adults, the fight or flight that kicks in. Now, imagine that as a 7 or 8 or 9 or 10-year-old, and you don't know how to properly express yourself. Right. What happens when you're arrested? What happens? That's traumatic. That is something that's going to happen. And by and large, who does it happen to? People that look like us. Let's be honest. By and large, it happens to people that look like us. So this is something that we were able to do, is raise the lower age to 12 years old. But for the more serious crimes, and because people are always concerned about the more heinous crimes, yes, you can still be charged with homicide. You can still be charged with certain major offenses, and I got to get down the list in a second. But you can still be charged with those, as a juvenile in the event that those offenses are committed. But you can potentially arrest a 7-year-old for hopping a turnstile. You can arrest a 7-year-old for a litany of offenses, and I don't think that does anything to further our justice system. If anything, it does. It creates it strengthens the vestiges of mass incarceration, because what does that do? It creates better criminals, as it were. It creates people who are a class of continually incarcerated individuals who learn how to continue to be incarcerated, who learn how to stay in the system, and cost more money to incarcerate than educate.
Yep.
And just to. I'd feel more comfortable spending that $100,000+ in a school as opposed to in a cell. And so that is an oversimplification of it. But I think the bottom line is that we're arresting a 7-year-old. What are we doing? Really, real talk. What are we doing?
Right. It's crazy, but we are so proud of your leadership on this bill. You will be getting your framed pin once the governor signs, right?
Yes, I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, and I'm gonna look, if it's public, I'm gonna snap a picture of it, because this is so incredibly important. Our young people, they need adults who are in leadership, and often it's not their parents, for whatever reason, but they're not the ones with the power. Often we're not the ones as parents with the power, and so for you all to take this and make it a priority, I say kudos to you and all who supported it. And we're looking forward to the decriminalization of every little thing that everybody does, right? And let's try to start getting people the real help that they need. Let me tee up my next 2 shows for them before I give the senator the space to have his final comments here. And before I even do that, Senator, I hope that you will come back again, because Absolutely. From all indications, everyone has really enjoyed you being here. This was your hour for you to just let it all hang out in the way that you would and still maintain your professionalism. I am so proud to have you here and happy having you here.
Well, thank you. I'm grateful. Thank you for allowing me to come on the space. So yes, I will definitely be back. I'm excited to come back. I'm excited to have a dialogue. And one of the good things about the only good thing about this crazy pandemic is that we've become more adept at having these virtual fireside chats, as it were, to be able to reach out to our community. And sometimes these are things that we need to be able to get to the village, and just say, look, hey, let's have this dialogue. Let's have this debate. Let's have this discussion. So I'm grateful to you for providing something where we can have a conversation that doesn't necessarily mean that we are in agreement, but it's a conversation that so desperately needs to happen. So I guess in closing, I just want to say Continue to hold us accountable. Continue to ask us questions. Continue to make good trouble, as John Lewis famously said. Shirley Chisholm said, "If there is no seat for you at the table, then you bring your own folding chair." Those are things that are germane. They were germane then, and they're germane now. And I say that not because I think that I am overly flawed or overly perfect, but just like everybody else, I'm somewhere in the middle. Yeah. And I need and I saw her comment, Miss Hazel. That's a really long question.
I know, that's why I didn't know our faces would be covered if I posted it over here. Let me see if you can read it if I put it over here. Let's see. Can you see it?
Miss Hazel, you anytime there's an ellipsis at the end, I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer that. But on a quick note, do I know why vocational training was part of these standards to be included in these curricula? I'm going to have to get back to that. What I can do is I can speak to our Assemblymember Benedetto, who is the chair of the education committee in the assembly, and I can ask Mike that question. I'd be happy to do so. But I bring up Miss Hazel as someone who will who she has a question, she'll reach out. You know, she'll say something that's on her mind, and I'm happy to address it with Ms. Leslie and with you, Dr. Jenkins, and Leah. And see, I started naming names.
Oh, don't start with the names.
See, I started naming names, and that's a problem. I gotta shout out Ron Hartridge. I gotta shout out everybody. I gotta shout out all the people. But in all seriousness, like I leave you all just with this before Dr. Jenkins closes. I'm sorry for the but I say this with such passion. We need each other, y'all. We need each other.
We do.
Like, we're not always going to agree, and that's all right. Yeah. Like, and I want to drill down on that. I don't want you to disagree with me because I don't want you to agree with me because I'm your senator and you like the color of my tie. Like, I don't want that, right? I think that we're nuanced individual, and life is based upon that shade of gray, that context. So I just ask that we all examine the context and that we think about the things that we do, and just I don't know. I'm grateful to be your state senator. I'm grateful to have this job where I'm able to represent who I think are the best people in the state, and I'm just grateful to have Leslie made me laugh. You like the color of my tie?
No, I'm laughing too.
I got this one like TJ Maxx. I think that's.
Let me show you all what we're laughing at.
I think this might have been a TJ Maxx or somewhere off the rack somewhere. I don't know, but in any event, I think that look, I love you. I love it.
They are paying attention, Senator.
That's only because I was outside today at the 21 and 21 press conference. I have not gone anywhere to tan, Miss Hazel, except the Northeast Bronx and Lower Westchester. So no vacations for me just yet.
Just yet.
But I'm grateful for this village, and I'm grateful for you, Reverend Dr. Jenkins, and thank you for your leadership. And just thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to coming back.
All right. Y'all heard him. He's coming back. You heard him, right? He's going to come back. But let me tell you who's coming up. Now, next week, we're going to take a break from the politics for 1 week. And I don't even feel like this was just politics. This was us getting to know our elected official, and he was just kicking it with us, okay? But in a very serious way, because he does the work, and we're very happy and proud to have him. Next week, it's a brothers show. I'm bringing on an all-male panel, Black men panel, because I saw a post by Pastor Anthony Davis, who's often been a guest here, about male patriarchy as it relates to Black men. Now, we know that that's also a nuanced conversation, because in the church, it's alive, well, and kicking. But he was actually talking about as it relates to Black men, where do they have their power? And so for me, I'm just simply here hosting a conversation with some Black men. This is not an invitation for Black women to come and say, but we this and but we that. I'm going to have a conversation with the sisters later. But I feel it's very important to give Black men space for their own time to discuss. And so because I do have this platform and a couple of them have been on here before, they are invited to be here next week. We're trying to put a nice little title to it, but they are going to talk about the liberties that they don't have. And I'm looking forward to that conversation, because sometimes we as Black women, other women who love Black men, we can have tone deaf attitudes towards their needs. They're not only here to be our providers, they're not only here to be our lovers, they're also here to be loved. And so I'm looking forward to having Pastor Anthony Davis from Harvest Restoration Ministries right here in Co-op City, Minister Yoram Keith Rodriguez, who's also been on here a few times, Brother Tony Lindsay from Brooklyn, New York, and my friend and colleague for many years, Bishop Reverend Dr. Darren Ferguson from New Jersey. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. But after that, on the 27th, one of these women who are ushering in a newness in the city council elect, Nantasha Williams, will be my guest on here on the 27th. I'm looking forward to her. She's young, she's vibrant, and she's representing, if I'm not mistaken, South Queens.
27th district. Natasha is like Natasha. I ran into her today at the. I don't mean to hijack, but I'm just.
No, go on.
It's like, this is the thing about electing like strong sisters. Natasha, shout out to her. She's dynamic. She's just, she's been in the space of activism.
Yes.
With Tamika Mallory and all of those good folks, my son and everybody, and she's pragmatic, but she's real. And she's she's definitely someone who I'm glad that we're going to have in the city council.
Yes.
And she's phenomenal. She represents the 27th district. It's the seat that will be vacated by Danique Miller. Danique Miller is also a strong Black man in his own right. Shout out to Danique. He's a great guy. Very influential in the BLAC, the Black caucus in the city council. But Natasha I think is going to bring a certain level of flavor into the city council, which I just want to, I forgot to say this line, and I was inspired by Lori by saying it when I censored my because look, I always say I got to do this job on my own terms, right? And I'll do this job for you, but I'll do them on my own terms, which means that you're going to hear me rap on the Senate floor, right? I've done that before. You're going to hear me tell jokes on the Senate floor. You're going to hear me do that because that's who I am, right? And so to kids listening, to everybody listening, code switching is something that's okay.
It's okay.
Code switching is something that we do. Quite literally, I have to make sure I have a jacket on in order to enter the floor of the Senate. Code switching is okay, but soul switching is okay. You can code switch, but you can't soul switch. So that's something that I've said a few times, but I want it to be known. You can code switch, but you can't soul switch. If you lose the core who you are, then I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know how to tell you. I don't know where to tell you. But this doesn't mean,
she's ready to bring out the collection plate for you, Senator. Why everybody come on this show trying to preach? I thought I was a preacher here, but it's okay. We love it. You can code switch, but you can't soul switch. That's how we say it in the Baptist church. You can code switch, but you can't soul switch, because that's those who hoop. They're getting ready for the hoop after that. Senator, I did not know you could preach. All right now.
Well, Matthew verses 7 and 7, asking you shall receive, seeking will find, knocking the door shall be open. Just like we always have to say, my pastor is the Reverend Dr. Allen M. Pinckney Jr. Come see us at 3920 Poland Avenue, Baltimore United Methodist Church. I think that's something that you have to say if you're a church kid.
That's right.
But
that's beautiful, Senator. I love it. And do it. Do that things. We want to know the next time you might think you might be, you know, doing a little hip hop on the floor.
I can send you a link because I've had some we had like a so we had Black Hit so I'm taking y'all way past the hour and change month, but
fine.
But look, so we had Black Music Month, and Black Music Month we talked about hip hop. Actually, I did a tribute to DMX on the floor of the Senate, and it's just kind of cool to be able to bring who I am to the floor of the state Senate. And and if anybody follows me on Twitter, I probably tweet about basketball and rap more than I tweet about anything else. And you know what? I'm okay with it, and I hope you are too.
We are very okay with it, because we need you, as somebody said, and I posted it, be yourself, get the job done, but be yourself while you're doing it. Yes. And so I'm looking forward to her too, Natasha Williams, because she is an activist. Tamika was out there in them streets in that last stretch, helping her get out the vote. And so we are happy that she's elected. And I do believe, I anticipate watching some more of the city council hearings with her presence being there. And so we're looking forward to her on the 27th. And before I can even get to the assemblyman, we're going to have, and I'm in communications with his schedulers, our newly elected congressman, Jamal Bowman. We got 2 Jamals up here, y'all. We got 2 Jamals to have him on the show. And so that'll probably go right into August, but he's also doing some great work alongside these other elected officials, like our Senator Bailey, like Assemblyman Hasty, Benedetto, Councilman Riley. He was just out with Councilman Riley yesterday, as Councilman Riley was doing a cleanup in the Co-op City. So our elected officials are in the community. They are on the ground. They are doing the work, and we are so grateful to you all. You are a great example. We thank you for hanging out with us for an hour and 27 minutes, Senator. We do want that link in the comments so that we can all see you doing your tribute to DMX and your hip hop other career. How's that?
Well, look, listen, as they say, I'll stick to that proverbial day job. But okay. But look, I'm a kid from the Bronx, man, and I love music, and not just music because it feeds the soul, and it's one of the things that, quite frankly, we can, music and sports. I love them because we can connect with people who we would otherwise not be able to connect with. When you go to a concert, when you go to a ball game, I'm not asking you, hey, who'd you vote for? If you're sitting next to me, when you're singing along with DMX next to me, I'm not asking, hey, listen, what do you think about bill number 5295? No, like we're in the same place, so we vibe off of something, and that means that brings us that much closer together. But I'm excited. Maybe next time, Miss Presley, I'll bust a rhyme or something like that,
But. That's my sister, Senator, and she loves her some Busta Rhymes. She does, and she's an educator. She does that too. She does what you do at her job. She breaks out the rap and stuff, She said we need a versus. Me versus Bowman, a versus. That's good, Juanita. Oh, look. If y'all game, we're game here. We are game here, because everything ain't got to be all straight laced. We can have some fun on the Black Talk platform. Look, I pinned this comment. I don't know my sister Gonzalez Taylor, but I think this is such a perfect quote for us to end tonight on, because she's affirming what we already believe is true, that you're a great dad. And if you're a great dad, we're believing, even though we're not in there, we're believing that you're also a great husband to their mom. How about that? Well, I hope she thinks so. Well, yes, I hope. I love her very much. Love my wife very much. I love my daughters immensely. I think that look, I'm gonna give you a little rhyme, right? I said this today. It's from Commons B, and I said this a few times, and is waiting for the Lord to rise and look into my daughter's eyes and realize I'm gonna learn through her, the Messiah,
might even return through her. If I'm gonna do it, I gotta change the world through her, right? So, and that's from Common's.
That's Common?
Yeah, it's Common. That's the intro to his album B, right? And so it looks like, you know, the perspective of a parent, like I see the world through my daughters. I see the world through my wife. My wife sees the world through our daughters. And so it's important for us to do anything that we can do to make sure that we raise our kids up. I think, look, I've been talking, I'm just excited. I'm comfortable, y'all. Like, you know, I saw somebody say this is a different side of me. I'm just a regular guy from the neighborhood. If you see me in the store, stop and talk to me. I love it. But, you know, I'm just happy to be here. This was dope. Like, I really enjoyed this. This is something that I think that I'd be happy to do more. We can do fun stuff. You can ask me my favorite movies and favorite music. We can do a fun version.
Let's do it. Let's do it because we need to be able to laugh. After this year or so that we've had, the entire world, we need to get back to some laughter. And for you to be able to do that too, with all of the heavy lift you have to do for us up in Albany, we welcome you back to do that anytime. We want to shout out to your whole staff. We think you have a great team. I actually saw your chief of staff yesterday just walking in the community, you know. So God is good, and we praise God for you and your service. We ask God to bless you, your family, and all of us, the 318,000 that you represent. Thank you all for being here tonight to greet our senator, this great leader here in New York State. I don't believe that this is the last we're going to hear from him. God bless you. Senator, can I see you in the back room, in the green room, after we end this conversation? Good night, everybody.
Good night.